So again, thank you for joining us today. Today we are going to learn how to put collisions or volumes on objects, and that way you don't walk through them, and that they actually can be picked up or moved around, and actually be as lifelike as possible. So with that being said, we're going to go over to this area over here, which I have the water, basically the water mattresses or the beach mattresses in the water right here. Basically, if you see this, I'm going to walk right through it, and I'm in the middle of the mattress. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and add a collision to these mattresses. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into edit mode, so into the create button right here, and we can just go ahead and hit the edit the scene, seeing that this is the scene we're going to edit. So what we're looking for in the properties is the volume. Okay, so let's go ahead to the mattress. I'm going to go ahead, let me slow down my camera by hitting minus. There we go. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and click on the mattress. We're going to right click on it, and you can see that in the properties there's basically nothing in there. Okay, so what we have to do is we have to go ahead and click on this part right here. We're going to go ahead and right click on it and go into the properties. So we're going to add where you put a collision. Matter of fact, let's move this up a little more so you can see the whole properties. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and go to add, and in the add button right here we're going to select volume. This is where you get the collision that Sansar basically has developed, but if you do have the ability to go into like a 3D editing tool, you can go ahead and add the mesh there. So if you hear mesh, volume, or collision, it's all pretty much, I would say, the same thing. But in Sansar, they have labeled it as volume. So we're going to go ahead and click on volume. And once you open up, it's going to bring you to the object structure. Go down to where it says volume. We're going to go ahead and right click on it, and let's get into the properties. As soon as you hit properties, you're going to be able to basically shape, and it's already given a volume to that object. Okay, so I would say that's pretty much close. I mean, if you want to get a little more detailed on it, so we could go just one on that. Let's go to 2.8 or 2.8 on that, and let's go 0.24, and all you have to do is hit enter, and you can actually adjust the volume as well. So I'm going to go ahead and leave it like that. Then all you got to do is click off of it, and that's that. Okay, so the next thing you want to do, we're going to make these, let's make it static. So we're going to keep it static. Tell you what, I'll make one static and I'll make one dynamic. Okay, we'll make this one dynamic. So if we want to grab it, we're going to have to make sure the grab is on. Go ahead and select the ride, so if you stand on top of it, you don't go through it. Audio, let's make it a, let's see what sound do you think this would be here? Let's see, we have brick.
Splash?
Which one?
Splash? Is there splash?
Splash. Plaster. It has to be like a soft sound.
Whoosh.
Yeah. Now I think we can add, that's something that I'll look into, but I think we can actually add new sounds into the audio materials. But keep in mind that this sound is like when it interacts, that's when the sound basically engages. Let's do like a, for some reason I think it's, even though it's not grass, I may just say grass because it sounds soft. Do that. Has collision. Okay. And seeing that we're in talking about collisions, I do want to talk about the draw distance, because this is something that just recently I figured out when I was working on an experience where I was getting a lot of draw calls. Okay, so if you're making things that are, or if you're putting objects inside a building where you can't see, then my recommendation is bring the draw call down to like 20 feet, right? Or in here it's 20 meters, right? So what's going to happen is I'll just bring this way down like this, and you'll see what I'm talking about. We'll bring it down to 10. But what that's going to do is it's going to allow the, all folks in that experience to let the experience run really smooth, okay? Because there's no need to see this from 100,000 meters away, okay? But the thing is if you have the draw distance set to 100,000, then your computer is going to call it, right? It's going to call that draw, and it's just another added, draw call that you don't need until you can actually physically see it. I guess I say physically see it because that's what you are doing when you're in the world, right? You're physically seeing it. But we're going to go ahead and bring this draw call. Let's make sure we're on that. Oh, you know what? I was on a different, what was I on? I think I was on this. I don't want to change the draw call to the islands. That's going to disappear. Let's put that back up. Let's click on this. There we go. And how you know that you are on that object is it'll give like a little blue haze around it, okay? So we can just, if we want to be perfect on that, just hit 20. Okay, let's go ahead, and this is going to be a dynamic shape. Let's make sure. Okay, we got everything good, good. All right, so we'll go ahead and hit build. Save and continue. And basically what should happen is when we load back in the scene, this should basically fall to the ground, which the water will probably go over it because I didn't. Now this is the thing, you could write a script, and I'm getting a little technical now. You could actually write a script in this where it would look like it's actually floating on the water, but that would take some engineering, and you'd probably have to hire a programmer to do that for you. But for this training purposes, just the basics, I just want to show you the difference between static and dynamic, as well as having it have a collision, okay? So if it doesn't have a collision, you're basically going to walk right on through it. So now where you would maybe have an object where you don't need collision on it is maybe it's in the far, it's a place that you're not going to go to in the experience, but you just want to have that effect in the experience. So maybe it could be like, say it's mountains way in the distance. That's something that, if you want to see, you're going to make sure you want to have the draw distance on it so you can see it, but you don't necessarily have to put a collision on it if you're not going to actually walk way out there and interact with it, okay? So as this is saving and building, we can talk about the draw calls, okay? So draw calls are basically, and I think I mentioned it in the first video a little bit, it's how heavy your experience or your world that you're creating is going to be on the computer, okay? And what I can say, the magic number for draw calls is try not to go over 2,500 draw calls in your experience, okay? And that's basically Sansar's recommendation, because depending on if you have like a big event and you have 50 plus avatars that come into this event, the draw calls are going to go through the roof, right? Because you got to consider the movement of the avatars as draw calls, okay? So Sansar has found that if you keep it under 2,500 draw calls, you should be able to maximize the amount of people in that experience. Now we had an expo just a couple weeks ago where I believe we had up to 21 or 22 folks in the experience. In my draw calls, there were close to 10,000, okay? And I was crossing my fingers hoping that the world would not crash, and lo and behold, it did not crash. So as long as everybody is not in one area all at one time, moving at one time with high draw calls, your experience should be just fine. Okay, but just keep that, put that in the back of your mind when you're building to, be looking at your draw calls, because the more you put in it, I always say less is more. If and a lot of these folks that build worlds that want to gamify it or actually make it to where it's very interactive, they're very conscious about where they put things, and the draw distance, and it's a lot of calculating out. So no, now I know this is, we're talking basics here, but if you understand the basics of the draw calls and the purpose of it, it's going to set you up for a very successful world, as well as not having you go back into the world and changing all the draw distances on objects. Okay, so we should just about be there. It's building the scene. Now, when I think I know why it's taking a long time, let me just verify. Let's go into the settings, and I think I set it for let's see here, because it is taking a while for it to upload. I think I might adjust the processing, which I did. See this right here, this global illumination quality. When we're building, let's turn it no processing. It's taking a long time for it to process. That's because I had it on standard, because I want all the effects to be taken effect when I come back in the world, but we don't need that right now. So let's go ahead and hit build again. It should go a lot quicker. Does anybody have any questions at this point?
I do.
Mhm.
How can you make collision objects that aren't visible, like that you don't? Because with the example you showed, you had an object and you created a collision on top of it. How can you just create like a invisible wall that collides?
Invisible wall that collides. That's a great
Yeah.
question. Basically, that would be part of the emissives. That'd be part of the texturing, right? So what you would do is you would go into that object and then click like I think it's transmissive, and you'll basically like see right through it. Now, if you don't,
Under
if you
material.
yeah, my bad. Yeah, materials. So that, matter of fact, seeing that you're asking that question, we'll go ahead and we'll do that. Having a total invisible like wall right there, it's basically adding the object there. I believe you can just add a collision right there without even having the object. So we'll go ahead and test that out, and that will
I
basically give like,
accidentally did that a few times,
yep.
right? Because of taking tables out. Sometimes when you bring a table in
Mm-hmm.
and it has its collision, and then you remove the table, the collision stays there.
Right.
So a collision will work if you just want it to be invisible and the person won't be able to get past.
And what purpose would you use that for?
Hmm.
If you're going to put invisible collisions in the world, what would you use that for?
Was it Austin asking the question
I believe so.
or
So
Dom?
Oh, yeah. I don't know. I was just curious. Maybe to make, like, for instance, my boat is a pretty not square shape, but the volume is. So if you wanted to make the boat, if you wanted if you wanted people to stand on the boat like you would actually stand on a boat in real life,
mm-hmm.
you would make a collision so
Ah,
that, like, you can stand on the boat and you'll sink to the floor and you won't stand above the floor because the collision box is well above the floor of the boat.
you can make different size collisions and put them all over the boat so that the boat has
Right.
more depth to it
Right.
instead of just using one collision box.
Okay, so you're saying you would use an invisible collision to where you would put it on a boat, but you wouldn't be able to stand to the bottom of the boat? Is that what you're saying?
No, so like the boat that you saw in my world,
Mm-hmm.
I added a collision like I added the volume to it, right?
Okay.
But the volume is a massive rectangle that goes
Correct.
over the boat. So if you were to go to stand on top of it, you would float above the boat. You
Got it.
won't actually stand on the boat.
Right.
So that's
So
what I mean. Is like
so basically what you're saying is you would want to use the collision to basically go around the boat so that way if you stepped in the boat you should step to the bottom of the boat and not just be like
right.
standing on top. Okay. Yeah, so that is the purpose of using these collision, but I guess the way I understood is that you would just want to put a invisible collision into a scene without having any object there.
Yeah, that too. I mean,
So this is the reason why the reason why I want to identify that because there is a purpose for it. Okay, so for an example, I collaborated with a doctor that was doing presentations where he didn't want the people to come up on stage. Okay, so what we did is we created an invisible wall where when you came to the front, you just stopped right there. You couldn't go any farther. You just stop right there, and he knew that you're trying to get on stage and he could see people jumping up because those are like folks trying to be hecklers, right? Because he had the scene open to the whole general public, right? So what we did is we actually created a script where he could actually push a button, and when people came into the scene, if he saw him coming down too fast, he was like, okay, yeah, there's people that are just going to jump on up on stage. So what happened is this invisible wall just went right up in front of them. So that's how we would use a invisible or a collision to make a wall that you couldn't get through is to basically be like a bouncer if you're going to be given like a presentation. And we also put a script on it where the sound volume couldn't get through it, right? So he could project his voice out to the crowd, but the whole crowd talking would not disrupt his train of thought when he's giving the presentation. So it's a very technical. And matter of fact, if I can get into that scene, I'll show you what I'm talking about so you can see how it works. But invisible collisions are great for controlling the crowd. Okay, so I think because I'm streaming, I'm recording and everything, it's taking a little bit of time on this. So I'll give it one more minute, and we should be there. If not, what I'll do is I'll just go back into edit mode so you folks can see the collision in another object and see how it looks. But this should be just about there. Make sure I got all my other stuff shut off so we don't have anything conflicting. Do we have any other questions on volumes for objects? I know Shelly's got a. I know Shelly has a lot of questions.
When we were doing the volumes yesterday, we were talking. Or
it's okay.
Sorry.
It's okay. Go ahead. Go ahead.
We were showing just basic volume, make it a square, turn it into a rectangle type thing. But maybe you could show a little bit of how to make those volumes a little more intricate so that Austin can actually get a floor in his boat, but then they can't walk through the side of the boat.
Correct.
You know,
Okay,
that's a little more detailed type of volume. Because that's important too.
Yep.
Right?
Absolutely.
It's not always just a square or a circle. Sometimes it's flat and it had to be turned on an angle to cover the whole area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Sansar has made this as simple as possible, okay? Because they know that it's not easy to, I guess, quote unquote mesh things, okay? Which basically is putting the volumes in the objects. But if you know how to use Blender, you can basically mesh that whole object out to where it's like right. I mean, it's perfect the way it was designed is where the collision will be on it, right? So like, for instance, I would say like making a mountain, right? And you have this mountain with all these rocks and stuff all built into it. Well, if you're like walking up this mountain and it's just squares and circles, I mean, your foot's going to walk through a lot of the objects, right? So, but Yeah, so Sans are just it's really basic, but you can get pretty technical with it in making collisions on basically virtually any object that you bring in, and I found in my experience finding free 3D assets on on the internet, they usually don't come with any collision. So you're gonna have to add your collision to it. But go ahead, Austin.
Sorry, I didn't have anything
Oh,
else.
Oh,
who's the
it was
who's
me,
the other
guys.
gentleman?
It was me, Dom.
Oh, go ahead, Dom.
Hey, just a couple of quick questions, actually. I was looking for the link, the YouTube link for yesterday's session, and I didn't find it. So I was just wondering if you posted it or.
Yeah, so I apologize. Yesterday I had a lot of stuff going on my computer, and I wasn't able to upload that. But today I'm gonna get that video uploaded as well as today's recording as well. So I apologize on my
Okay,
part.
great. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. And I mean, it's not about exactly what we're talking about right now, but I'm having some issues with navigating, and maybe after we're done with the lesson, you can sort of answer some. Did you get that?
Okay, you're breaking up. Go ahead, say that again.
Sorry, no, I was just having some issues navigating in the world when I was building it, so I got a little bit frustrated yesterday,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe when we have some time near the end, we can just go over some navigation stuff for me.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can go through it. So what is
Okay.
happening here? Can you see? Can you folks see my screen?
Yeah.
Yes. What is that?
Okay, so the island is capsizing right now.
Oh,
And what
yes.
happened? Okay, can anybody figure out what happened here? Because this is typically what's going to happen, and I don't want this to frustrate you folks.
Is this a bunch of collision boxes inside of each other or something?
Okay, so what happened was I didn't realize which item I was on, and I basically made the whole island dynamic. So it's floating all over the place. Okay.
So when you touched down, it exploded.
Yep, it basically came apart. Okay, and this is typical in the very beginning when you folks start building. You're like, what is going on? Why is this, moving all over the place, right? So I can literally, let's go over this way. Let's see if we can find it. Okay.
I know my number one mistake that I made when I was starting was not being on the correct object,
Mm-hmm.
making some changes to it, maybe deleting something, and then going and realizing that I had completely deleted something that wasn't what I was working on.
Mm-hmm.
So it's important to make sure that you're on the object.
Okay, so
That's how I
so-
lost my floor I don't know how many times.
Yep. This will be a typical in the beginning frustration that you folks will have. So what we need to do is let's go back into edit mode. So into create, we're going to hit edit the scene. And it's obvious that the sand island that I put in there is dynamic, okay? So right now when we're in edit mode it looks fine, right? But let's go ahead and click on it. Right click on this and let's go into the properties. And you can see right there it's dynamic. Okay? So I just wanted to see if you folks could catch that. So we're going to go ahead and make it static. And all you got to do is exit off of it. And that's why it was taking so long for it to process, because it was saying, wow, this editor wants to make this whole thing stack. Okay, well, we're going to give it to you. And it had to process all that, right? So let's go ahead and hit build again. And we'll go once we go into the scene and I show you the beach mattress. We'll go back into the function keys and everything. So, and what I'll do is I'll go step by step, making sure that you folks totally understand what that function of that key is for. Okay, because that is I gotta say, Dom, that's the most important thing in learning first when you start editing, because it took me a couple weeks to figure out what the adjusters were and how to use them right. And it honestly, I gotta be honest, I actually uninstalled Sansar on my computer because I was just so frustrated. I was like, okay, this is wasting my time. I don't have time for this. It's not very easy to use and it's not intuitive. But then I thought, no, that's me giving up, right? So then I went back in and I just kept making all the mistakes. And then I started making friends in Sandsar and saying, hey, how do you do this? How do you do that? Some will say, hey, I don't got time for you. But some people say, yeah, sure, no problem. I'll show you how to do it. But that's why all you folks are here. I want to, I'm here to make sure you don't have any frustrations, okay? If you have a frustration, it's because you didn't ask me the question, okay? And, this class will keep continuing until everybody gets up to, shoulder to shoulder and be able to build, a basic island with, palm trees on it, beach balls, and if you want, you can put a stage in there to have your first event or party, okay? So as soon as this uploads here, again, like I was saying, make sure you have the scene illumination on no processing, okay? And that's in your scene settings. So if you go up here, it's going to be in your scene settings. Make sure, because what's going to happen, there's no need to have all the finished touches on an edited scene. Just, get everything the way you want it. Then once you're saying, okay, hey, this world is ready to go, this is the way I want it, then go ahead and hit standard or however you want all the actions to take place in that scene, okay? So I'm not going to go too much back and forth between edit mode and regular mode here, but once we go back into edit mode, I'll go through all the keys and everything. And please stop me if I'm going too fast. Please stop me and ask me, thoroughly what that function or that key is for, okay? If anybody has any more questions, I'm here to answer them.
Hey, Robert, I have another question.
Absolutely.
How do you? I was trying to do it last night, but I can't remember how you go in to access the direction of the light and then change
Okay.
to adjust the direction of the light.
Okay. Great question. So tell you what, see, just to save on time, I'm gonna go ahead and cancel this because those are all great questions. I want to make sure that we're not using up time for uploading the scenes here. Okay, so directional light. What you'd want to do is go into your tools, okay? Click on tools and then go into scene objects, okay? And then right up at, oh, I just crashed. Okay, hang on, let me get Sansar back up. Let me stop.